Welcome to the garage. I'm Robert, and this is haslipcycleworks. And today, we're back on Project Vulcan. Last episode of Project Vulcan, we got our seat hoop kind of tacked in place, our seat bolted down, our cowl just resting there. We got our shocks installed. So what we want to do is to continue cleaning up the back end of this bike. We want to get rid of that heavy, chunky kind of cruiser look and make it look more like a cafe racer. One of the biggest items to get rid of are these covers. So we're going to pop these off, and then we're going to cut these brackets off. And we'll just repeat on the other side. Okay, so I've got the seat off, the tank is off, and I've gone ahead and taken the battery out of the battery box, just so that we're safe, and if we do manage to nick a wire, we don't cause a fire or anything. And it's already looking better. The worst part about the Vulcan 750 is the wiring. There's a lot of extra redundancy that's not really needed. There's a bunch of safety that we don't really need. It's just overly complicated. So I'm gonna kind of hope that one of you guys out there that watch the video series know a little something about the Vulcan wiring. But if you've got some sort of diagram that shows a simplified setup for these bikes without the clutch safety, without the kickstand safety, and without the neutral safety, and the weird headlight setup that they have. If you've got a wiring diagram simplified down to only what you need to run it, let me know in the comments below. But what I'm going to go ahead and do now is unbolt the battery box. It is removable, so I'm going to go ahead and unbolt that, and anything that's hanging off it, we're just going to let hang here so that we know what we're working with. So after about 15 minutes of wrenching, and most of it was 10 mil, and then a couple Phillips head, got this nasty hunk of junk out. That was the factory battery box. As you can see, time has not been its friend. It's starting to rust through in some spots, and well, we just don't want it. So as you can see, I'm going to kind of bring you guys down here. We're left with all this wiring. Now the only real thing left in this area that we need to keep, other than the electronics, as you can see, is the swing arm. And there's our rear tire. So yeah, really need to get the wiring figured out on this bike. There is a lot of excess stuff that we're not going to use, and if we could get rid of all that, it would be so much easier to hide and clean up. And I'm not sure on the specs of the charging system quite yet, but I may be able to go with a smaller battery, maybe a non-lead acid type battery. So again, if you guys know anything, have a link to something or whatever that Shows you how to clean up the wiring, maybe get rid of some of this garbage. That would be greatly appreciated. Just go ahead and put a link to it, or whatever the case may be, down in the comment section for me. I greatly appreciate it. Otherwise, I mean, I could figure it out. It's just going to take me a little bit longer. And like I said before, and I'm sure like you guys as well, I hate wiring. What we'll do now is I will go ahead and clip some of these ties that are holding the cabling and the loom together. Make sure I label everything. And I'm going to pull it back up the backbone so that we can start getting a game plan for getting some of these extra bars out. Now, we'll be adding some bars in other locations to make sure that the frame stays nice and strong and straight, but these no longer serve a purpose, so we're going to get these out of here next. So as you can see, I've cut these parallel bars out. Bike is still fine. There was no spring or movement in the frame once we cut that out. So that tells us that we did a good job installing our seat hoop, and it's in pretty well. I did leave this cross brace in, and I still have to cut the old tank mount out. But what I would like to do is, I don't know if you can kind of see this in the camera, but there's tubing that runs straight through here to this piece of frame, and then they've wrapped it in these gussets. So I'd like to cut these out, get those out of the way, and then I may either take this piece once we cut it out and notch it and weld it up here, just to give us a little extra tie-in strength on the back end of the frame. And then I may take another piece and run it from here to the other frame rail just to tie it in. Just want to make sure it's strong. We definitely don't want to be riding this thing and something fail. I don't think we will. Our welds are nice and sound, no issues. Our wall thickness on all our tubes is substantial enough that I'm not worried about it. But better safe than sorry. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is start to unwrap some of these gusseted material pieces here, just to make sure what we're working with. Figure out the best way to either reuse this material that we're cutting out, because we are on a budget, so if we can not spend money on materials, the better off we are. If I can't reuse this, then what I'll do, just to make it consistent, is measure this tubing and get the same diameter and wall thickness, and we'll make our pieces that run between the frame rails up here and here, get those notched, cut the length, notched, and then welded in place. And then the next area that I would like to address is this area here. We have all of this extra material. I'd like to round this off and taper it into this piece and finish this into the frame hoop. Hopefully we can get to that in this video. But I'm going to go ahead and probably take the angle grinder and score above the welds and see if we can't peel these pieces out. And I'll go ahead and bring you back once that's done. But as you can see, we're starting to get that nice open feel underneath the seat, which is what we're going for. Really wish I could get rid of those electronics, but we'll get that figured out later. So far, we've removed everything you see in this bucket, which are the tabs, the bolts, and everything that we cut out and removed. And then the actual battery box. And what I've done is gone ahead and took the angle grinder with the flap disc to the frame where we cut the tabs and the tubes off and smoothed it out. So this is how she sits now. It's looking real clean and empty in this area, which is what we're looking for. I've taken the angle grinder with the flat disc and kind of just clean these up. I'm going to go back with a file and finish this all off so it's nice and smooth, so you don't see the kind of lumpiness in it when we put some black paint on here. But it's looking good. The only real thing left is the old tank mount, and I'm going to leave this in until I cut and notch a tube to run from here to the other frame rail. Just want to make sure this is all tied in and nice and strong. And I may actually leave this other coil here. I may add some tabs so that this can be just mounted right here. And I think I've got a solution for all this garbage, but I don't want to quite get into that yet. What we need to do next is deal with this hunk of useless metal here. And for that, I like to use CAD, but not the CAD that you're thinking of. In this garage, CAD consists of, or is an acronym for, cardboard aided design. Need a few tools and items to accomplish that. Need some heavyweight paper, like manila folder weight. You don't really need heavy cardstock because you may need to bend it, but it needs to be a little heavier than like printer paper or something. Some sort of painter's tape, something that you can lay down in the area that you need to cut, but you can easily peel off. A nice sharp blade to cut some lines, a marker or a pen of some type to draw the lines, and then once we're done, we'll need some scissors to cut our final shape out of our cardboard. And what we'll do once we have that final shape is we can bring it back to the bike, and we can set it here and get our line, and we'll mark this, and we'll put it on the back side and do the same thing, and we'll cut both sides independently of each other, and we'll do it on the other side of the bike. And once we have our final shapes, and as long as we follow those lines and we're careful with the saw, then we know that they'll all be the same. And then what I'm going to do is come back with some flat stock and fill this back in on this side. So we'll be left with an open joint. We'll be cutting down here and opening up this box section. So the flat stock will actually close that off and run the length of the cut that we're going to put in. So it'll stay nice and strong, nice and clean, and will give us a good transition from our shock mount up into our seat hoop on both sides. So I'll show you how we do that. Then all we have to do is do it on the other side of this bracket and the other side of the bike. It'll be very close, and if need be, once we're done cutting, we can always come back and grind it back and do any changes we may need. But that's pretty much it. CAD. After using our little CAD template, I marked both sides of the metal we wanted to trim and went ahead and cut that out with the Sawzall. And I did this side and then I did the back side, because trying to keep that blade straight between two sides, that's hard to manage, especially on something like a Sawzall where it's got a wider blade. Hard to make turns, and we wanted a nice gradual swoop here. And I just came back and trimmed it to the line using our angle grinder and the flap disc with some medium grit on it. As you can see, did it on both sides, and went back with my deburring tool and ran it through there to get some of the flashing off. So it looks pretty good. Now before I go and cut the caps that will fit on this, what I want to do is come in here and clean up this. As you can see, there's a little bit of surface rust, and that will affect our TIG welds. So we want fresh, clean metal. So I'll clean this up some more. And once I'm satisfied with it, I'll triple check the shape, because once we burn that back piece on here, it's going to be hard to shape it anymore. So I'm going to triple check that, make sure it looks good. I'm going to roll the bike out into the sun, take a good hard look at it, make sure it looks good, and then I'll go ahead and trace out the back strap that we're going to weld to this, trim it, and I'll weld it in place. What I did was took another piece of cardboard and laid it on the back here and traced that shape. Cut that filler piece out of, I believe it's 1/8 inch steel, and blended it nice and smooth with the angle grinder of a flap disc. Got it to fit really good, and then I just, started down here, tacked it in, and pushed it in with a hammer, tacked up a little bit more, and just kept working all the way up until I got to the very top. And then did the same on the back side here. And what I did was came back with the same angle grinder flap disc and started blending it in. You can see where I made a few mistakes, and sometimes, especially with a TIG, if you've got some dirty metal, it can play hell on a bead. So always make sure that you get your mating surfaces as clean as possible. And as you can see, we got some heat in it and bubbled up the factory powder coat. No problem there. Clean all that out. But it started blending it in here. I'm going to have to fill this in, blend this out pretty good. So it take a little bit of buildup, but no big deal. But as you can see, there's the filler piece. I still have to run a bead down here at the bottom, close that in, and then blend that in. And this filler is thick enough that I can round this over real nice, have a nice gentle curve to it, and I think that's going to flow pretty good. But I'm going to go ahead and do the other side. I'm not going to bore you with that. So I think that's it for this one, guys. We've got a lot done. Our bucket is full of a bunch of pieces. And yeah, I'm going to get the other side done. And between now and the next video, hopefully I can find some information on what to do with this wiring and how to clean that up. I do have an idea to make a kind of false floor through here. I need to check the swing on the swing arm and the tire and make sure, and measure and everything. But I think I might be able to do like a flat plate across here and mount the electronics underneath. I'll play with that and see how that goes between now and the next video. And I'll measure everything, get any supplies I might need. And then the next one, we're going to handle the electronics, some gusseting that I want to put in just to strengthen this up. You know, maybe a gusset from here to here, and maybe from the seat hoop to here, just added strength and add some nice little features to the bike's frame, because that's pretty much all that's going to be back here. So we want this to look really sharp, really clean. Don't want it to look too boring. So yeah, I think that's it for this one, guys. So until next time, get out there and do it.